Picture this. A civilian internet service marketed for rural homes, ships at sea, and people tired of slow Wi-Fi. A constellation of small satellites promising faster downloads and lower latency. Nothing about it looks like a weapon. And yet, modern wars now depend on it. Not occasionally, not experimentally, but structurally. And that raises a question most people still aren't asking. How did a commercial internet network quietly become one of the most critical military assets on Earth? Starlink was never introduced as a defense program. There were no military unveilings, no warfighting doctrine papers, no official declarations. It arrived the way consumer technology always does, through convenience. Fast internet where nothing else worked, simple terminals, no complex infrastructure, just connectivity. At first, it looked irrelevant to warfare. Militaries already had satellites. They already had secure communications. They already had networks built for conflict. Starlink was supposed to be cheaper, more flexible, commercial, useful, but replaceable. That assumption didn't last, because modern war broke a rule most systems were built around. It stopped being predictable. Traditional military networks are designed for stability, known locations, known users, known demand. They work beautifully until those assumptions collapse. Until infrastructure is destroyed, until units move faster than networks can follow, until jamming, cyber attacks, and physical strikes turn planning into guesswork. That's where Starlink entered the picture, not as a superior system, but as an available one. And availability changed everything. Starlink didn't need bases. It didn't need hardened facilities. It didn't need years of deployment planning. It just needed power and a clear view of the sky. Suddenly, units that should have gone dark didn't. Command links that should have broken stayed alive. Drones that should have been blind kept seeing. Not because Starlink was designed for war, but because it was designed to exist everywhere. That distinction matters. Starlink didn't win because it was optimized for combat. It won because it was optimized for scale. Most military satellites are precious. They're expensive. They're few. They're carefully protected. Lose one and it's a strategic event. Starlink satellites are the opposite. Thousands of them. Individually expendable. Constantly replenished. You don't defend Starlink the way you defend traditional systems. You overwhelm attackers with redundancy. This is the first uncomfortable truth. Starlink survives not by being untouchable, but by being too numerous to meaningfully suppress. That's not elegance, that's brute reality. Which leads to the second uncomfortable truth. Starlink wasn't adopted because militaries wanted it. It was adopted because they couldn't afford to lose connectivity anymore. Modern warfare runs on data. Targeting, coordination, situational awareness. Lose the network and even advanced weapons revert to guesswork. And Starlink turned out to be the fastest way to restore that network under fire. That created a strange paradox. A civilian system became militarily indispensable while remaining politically ambiguous. It wasn't owned by a defense ministry. It wasn't governed by military command structures. It wasn't built with escalation in mind. And yet it sat directly inside the battlefield. This ambiguity is exactly what makes Starlink powerful and dangerous, because it doesn't fit existing categories. It's not a weapon, it's not neutral infrastructure, it's not easily replaceable. It exists in between. And that in-between space is where modern conflict increasingly lives, not in declared war, not in peace, but in persistent tension, grey zones, and contested environments. Starlink thrives there. When Starlink is present, communication becomes harder to cut. When communication becomes harder to cut, the cost of aggression rises. Not because the system strikes back, but because it removes uncertainty. This is why Starlink changes decision-making before combat even starts. It doesn't deter by threatening destruction. It deters by denying isolation. That's the key shift. Old military networks were designed to survive attacks. Starlink was designed to survive disruption. Those aren't the same thing, and this is where the deeper logic emerges. Starlink doesn't dominate warfighting. It stabilizes it. It keeps systems talking when everything else is trying to pull them apart. That stability is invisible, but without it, nothing else works. This also explains why Starlink's role is so controversial, because once a system becomes essential, neutrality becomes fragile. Every decision, where coverage exists, how access is granted, when services are limited, starts to carry strategic weight, not because Starlink chose war, but because war chose Starlink. The future only intensifies this logic. As more weapons depend on connectivity, as drones, sensors, and autonomous systems multiply, the network stops being support. It becomes the battlefield itself, and Starlink already occupies that space. That doesn't make it invincible. It makes it central, and central systems don't need to be perfect. They just need to be there when everything else isn't. So the strange truth about Starlink is this: it never needed to be a weapon. Its power comes from being unavoidable, from existing everywhere, from failing gracefully, from making collapse harder than continuity. In a world obsessed with firepower, Starlink reminds us of something uncomfortable. Wars are no longer decided by what you can destroy. They're decided by what you can keep connected. And Starlink, quietly, commercially, almost accidentally, became one of the most important answers to that question. Not because it was meant to fight wars, but because modern wars can't function without it. If everything depends on connection, what happens when the connection itself becomes fragile?